Thanks very much. I appreciate that. Okay, who has heard of Jaboticaba? Keep your hand up if you've ever seen one. Keep your hand up if you've tasted one before today. Okay, good. So I feel like I'm with my people. Whenever I get with other fruit growers, I just get this good feeling that you guys are cool and you guys are interested in the same kind of things I am. So that gets me excited. And when I was, asked if I could speak, and I told my wife, she's like, okay, he's gonna shut up and talk to other people about Jaboticaba, so you better go. And that's kind of how it happened. So I am the owner of the Farwell Fruit Farm in Fort Myers. We have a 5-acre lot that we're planting out now and another 20 that we're gonna be developing pretty soon. We grow about 450 species of fruit right now. We're trying to get it up to about 1,500 in the next 20 years. And we're hoping to have the most diverse collection of fruit trees in the United States. I don't know that we'll get there, but I'm gonna die trying.
You'll get there.
I'll get there, yeah. And so we do grow all kinds of different stuff. We sell seeds. That's kind of our business. My wife and I we also own a Montessori school in Fort Myers. So that's kind of our day job, and Joyce is a teacher there, and I'm I'm technically an administrator there, but I don't go in there. I go in for a couple hours on Friday mornings. And I left a few years ago to do this full time, to run the farm. And we started out selling plants on eBay and that type of thing, and I very quickly realized that doing seeds was a better fit for me. And so that's what we do. So farwellfruitfarm.com, we sell all kinds of seeds, but my favorite by far is the Plinias. I remember I came across Charles Boning's book, Florida's Best Tropical Plants. Anybody heard of that one? It's a real popular one. It's got the little charts where it gives a 1 out of 5 stars for each of the categories. What, aesthetics, productivity, drought tolerance, and I just loved how he had that little chart. It kind of gives you a quick shot at each of those plants. And I found Jaboticaba. And then I found a Brazilian wife. And I showed her, I said, look at this sucker, it's got 4 and 5 out of 5 stars in every category. What the heck is this thing? Except drought tolerance, which we'll talk about. And she said, oh, Jaboticaba, okay, yeah. And she started telling me about it, and I finally came across one at Robert is here in Homestead. They just happened to have one, and made a big mistake by trying one. Don't try it. If you don't want to start, if you don't want to have to stop, don't start taking Jaboticaba. So the presentation for today is going to go over these 9 things. Pay attention, because at the end we're going to do a quiz and you have a chance to win some awesome plants, Plinias and Merciarias. So before we get started, let's do a quick vote between the short version and the long version. Raise your hand if you want the short version.
Wait, how long is the short version?
4 hours.
Short version.
Well, you should see the long version. No, I'm gonna try to go about half hour, and then we'll do mostly Q&A. Okay, so briefly, the genre. Genre is the plural word for genus. It's not genuses, right? It is genre. So you can see this genre, these genre have been messed around with a lot in the last 20 years. A lot of Merciaria got absorbed by Plinia. You can see in some previous charts it was called Mercia. There's been a lot of kind of migration from Eugenia decades ago to Merciaria, and then a lot of those ended up finally in Plinia. The official change was in 2012, based on the GRIN database, the GRIN database, which is the way that the USDA, that's what the USDA anyway, uses for classification. So you can see it's right next to all the other related ones right next to Eugenia. Oops, can't quite point. Right next to Eugenia here, and Psidium and so forth, but they're all in Myrtaceae. And so that's where we're at. So officially there's 69 species of Plinia. That number is with 100% certainty going to grow significantly. A lot of these Jaboticaba type plants I've been unearthing in the last 5 years are almost, several are actually formally in the process of sort of being added as new species. So you can expect the Plinia genus to grow significantly, but they're mostly all from the tropical Americas and the Caribbean. There's a huge number of cultivars. I have a database. I haven't updated it in at least 6 to 12 months, but The last time I updated it was just north of 250 cultivars of Jaboticaba. Several of them are different species, but most of them are just, heirloom cultivars with names.
How many did you say?
It was at least 250. It's probably in the 300 plus range. And so yeah, here's what we were talking about a little bit, how this kind of stuff was migrating from Eugenia here, to Murcia, to Merciaria, and hopefully they found their kind of final resting place, a lot of them in Plinia. So the other thing we're going to talk about is Merciaria. Merciaria is Plinia's much less developed cousin. There are a lot less species and they are not as good. Still very good, but they just obviously spend less time around humans. There's more astringency, there's more resin in the rind, not as heavy on production. It almost seems like what a lot of the Plinia and Jaboticaba varieties were hundreds of years ago, something in that. So you can think of them as being similar. The main difference that people talk about is that the Plinias are coniferous producers, or producing on the callus or the trunk. Usually the older the part of the tree, the thicker the part of the tree, the higher the production, and they grow right on the trunk. And for Merciaria, they usually grow more on the branches, like a little bit more of a classical fruit tree. And then there are exceptions to both of those. There are Plinias that produce mainly on the ends, and Merciaria that will produce pretty close to the callus. But that rule is generally true for the difference between those two. Here's some of the ones that you're seeing that are being traded, these days. Probably the most popular one by far is the blue grape, the Merciaria vexator. This is probably the most well-known Merciaria. Probably the second one would be the Cabeluda, or the yellow Jaboticaba, which is fuzzy and yellow. And you're starting to see more and more of these being traded. Merciaria dubia, which is camu camu. That is big. Oh, I can't touch the screen. Okay, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. Yeah, I can't point. Oh boy. Okay, I'm gonna have to point like this. So yeah, dubia, if you get down to the Amazon, you're gonna see that thing all over the place. The camu camu is very common in the tropics, but outside of the tropics, it's very hard to find. And then you have Merciaria strigipes and guaquiea, which are so similar, I can barely tell them apart. But they are, those two, significantly different than the Glazioviana or the yellow Jaboticaba. Okay, so why are we using the word Jaboticaba and Plinia? What is the difference? How interchangeable are they? Glad you guys asked. Jaboticaba, I'm going to make a case for it in this presentation, should cover a very specific group of Plinias. Now, as far as how often you're going to see it and run into it, that Jaboticabas are by far the vast majority of Plinias you're going to come into contact with. Now, if you look at it just as like all the other species of Plinia, there are many other species of Plinia. Many of them are not very good, frankly, to eat. You can't eat them, like Plinia pseudochanchnathiana. There's a bunch of different Plinias that are pretty, they're more kind of monkey and bird fruit type of things. You can eat them, but I'd probably leave most of them to the birds. But I'm gonna make a case for what Jaboticabas are. So here's my proposal. We should only call a plant a Jaboticaba if it has graft compatibility with the sabar. That's what you guys got to eat today. That is an exceptional rootstock. Sabar is probably the best rootstock for this area, and that mainly has to do with the alkaline soils. You can put Sabara in the high pH soils in this area and it will do pretty well. A second place, a candidate that's really good is Restinga. Restinga is also high pH tolerant and also very salt tolerant. Restinga is a Portuguese word. It means a coastal sandy area. A lot of times they're coastal barrier islands, but it can also be described as like sandy subtropical savanna, but it's exactly the kind of thing we have around here. Sandy soils along the ocean. So the Restinga is a very good rootstock, and so is oblongata. Plinia oblongata is used most commonly in Asia as rootstock. Okay, so this is a kind of personal thing that I've been wanting to talk about for years. I want to ask people to stop calling this blue Jaboticaba. It is not a Jaboticaba. This is very different from a Jaboticaba. This has a very thick rind. No damage to the fruit, right? If you grab one of those Sabaras and you do that, it's gonna kind of go thunk. I mean, they can be a little hard for the first like 12 hours you pick them, but this is a vastly inferior fruit to Jaboticaba. It's insulting. So let's call this blue grape. Let's go back to calling it blue grape, and let's go back to calling you the yellow Jaboticaba cabeluda, which is the Portuguese word for it. That is not a Jaboticaba. It is definitely inferior, although it also is also a very good fruit. Okay, let's talk a little about naming. How many of you are in the Plinia Facebook group or see people posting all these new Jaboticabas online? Raise your hand if you're starting to see that. Okay, so it's starting to get more popular. I run a group called Plinia Jaboticaba Growers on Facebook. It's awesome. It is so fanatical. It is the most rabid, fanatical people of all the fruit growers. I mean, probably the second place would be like mangoes. There's some people who really get into mangoes. But to join the Plinia Jaboticaba group, you have to kill a man. So it's pretty intense. People really get excited. Well, or get a tattoo. Something Jaboticaba related. Tattoo or you kill a man. A lot of the stuff's in Portuguese. So if you don't speak Portuguese, you're at a disadvantage. A lot of these cultivars, I mean, probably 95% of them have a name in Portuguese. Some of them is stuck and people are calling it by the Portuguese name, and some of them people are calling by the English name. Good examples, Peluda do Mucuri. That's one that's the Portuguese name. The English name is blue velvet. Almost nobody calls it blue velvet. Why some names have stuck in English and others have stuck in Portuguese, I don't know. It's interesting, but you're gonna see a lot of abbreviations. There's a lot of universities in Brazil that have research in relation to Plinia. Jaboticaba is in Brazil like mulberry is to the United States. And what I mean by that is, how many people do we think in the United States know what a mulberry is? If you took a quiz of all the 18-plus-year-old Americans, probably 98% know what a mulberry is, okay? Now, when's the last time you bought a mulberry in the supermarket? Never, right? Why? Because the hold period's terrible, right? Shipping and handling is terrible, hold period's terrible. It's something people love to grow in their backyard. Every Brazilian you meet will love to tell you about the jabuticaba, or jabuticabeira in their house growing up, or their aunt's house, or their sister's house, or their neighbor's house. Very, very common. You see them all over the place in Brazil. I would say it's gotta be 99% of Brazilians know what a jabuticaba is, and everybody usually loves them. But they're very little commercial production. We're gonna talk about that in a minute. There is some production, but most of it frankly turns into processed products. Buying the fresh fruit, even Brazil, is really difficult. We're gonna skip the Portuguese part just because we got a lot of stuff to get through. Okay, history of Jaboticaba in Florida. The first evidence that I could find was David Fairchild and Adolf Grimmel. Fairchild wrote about it in The World Is My Garden and some other books. You know, he's kind of the granddaddy of a lot of fruit in Florida. Adolf Grimmel, who's heard of Adolf Grimmel? The Grimmel Grove. Anybody heard of the Grimmel Grove? So the Grimmel Grove is about a 2-ish acre property down in the Keys, where Adolf Grimmel, a kind of hermit aesthetic type, went and started growing all these different tropical plants in the Keys, and he made these cisterns, and it's a neat place. But he had a very famous set of trees down there. He had one that he didn't know was called, and people just started calling it the Grimmel Jaboticaba. We have since found out that in Brazil it's called Peluda de Alagoas. Peluda meaning hairy or pubescent, and Alagoas being a region of Brazil. So those are the same thing. We are 100% sure now Peluda de Alagoas is Grimmel Jaboticaba. John Kimber, Larry Schatzer, a bunch of folks up in Central Florida have probably been responsible for most of the germplasm that's in the state. And Larry Schatzer, I don't know if any of you guys know him, he's the biggest Jaboticaba trees I've seen in the United States. He has some Jaboticabas that are foot diameter, 30 foot tall, and he has a bunch of different types. He's got probably at least 8 to 10 different species. If you're up in kind of West Orlando suburbs, his place is amazing. It's called, I think, All My Kids Nursery. He has some awesome trees, and short of going to Brazil, they're pretty much going to be the best thing you're going to These are some of the dates. The big things so what changed, right? Because when I first started really getting into these was about 2013, 14, 15 was where I really started getting into Jaboticabas. And it was on like online message boards and tropicalfruitforum.com and dark corners of the internet, people talking about there's a 5th Jaboticaba variety. And no, now there's a 6th Jaboticaba variety. I mean, if you had 5 different Jaboticabas in 2014, you were like God tier level grower, okay? Now I've got well over 200 and I don't even have half. There are so many of them now. So what changed? Well, Charles Boning's book was a huge impetus behind the growth in the market. And then Adam Schafran from Flying Fox Fruits, which is ironic because we're the other triple F. That's total accident. Some people were, I got it from FFF. It's like Farwell Fruit Farm or Flying Fox Fruits because we're both the kind of big Jaboticaba guys. Adam Schafran gets all the credit. He really created this market. He's kind of a goofy guy. He has quite an internet presence, and he's really responsible for getting a lot of this market growing. And then in the last probably 5 years, there's a bunch of other vendors such as myself that have gotten into growing them and promoting them and so forth. Okay, how many different actual species of Jaboticaba are there? Not a ton, frankly. I mean, it's something like around 10 to 12. Plinia Jaboticaba, Cauliflora, Ariana, these are your kind of most common ones. Of let's say a dozen species of Jaboticaba, there's 300 plus cultivars, right? It's a huge number of cultivars. These are kind of backyard heirloom varieties. Couple of clarifications, you're starting to see now with some of these Jaboticabas, seeing the sp.nov, species nov, or new species, which I've heard conflicting accounts, but typically means it's sort of in the process of being described as a new species or highly suspected to be a new species. You're seeing that for at least 3 or 4 of the what I call like the wild Jaboticabas, plus Caipirinha. There's a number of different Jaboticaba species that are so different, they're almost certainly gonna get a new species name. And some of them have really low graft compatibility with Sabara, which I think further confirms that you're gonna see some new species coming out of this. Most of the Jaboticabas, you're just gonna see them as SPs, right? Species unknown, but we call it this. The 4 main groups. Okay, so what is a Jaboticaba versus a Plinia? The true Jaboticabas, this is the largest group. Common varieties are Sabara, Paulista, Trunciflora, Coronata. All those have high graft compatibility, which is awesome. Because some of them are quite hard to grow. And some of them specific cultivars have significant problems with germination and survival past what I call the Plinia zone of death, which is from 6 to 18 months old, when a lot of plants die off, but they have excellent grafting compatibility, which is great. The second group are what I call the yellow Plinias. There are a small group of these, and it hasn't really changed much in the last few years, but we are seeing grafting intercompatibility between the yellow Plinias. So that's one that I have right here. This is the giant mulchi, which I'm gonna show you some pictures that I think you're gonna love in a minute. And there's about 5 or 6 of the yellow Plinias. Then there's the yellow Merciarias, which is the Cabeluda, or formerly known as, right, yellow Jaboticaba. And this is graft intercompatible with Guaquiea, which is also called Guaquica, Strigipes, those 3. And then there's some different cultivars now of the yellows coming out, which we actually have right now. I have not been able to get hold of very many of these, but I have seeds right now for the Merciaria glazioviana Cabeluda da Cruz, which is a huge variety of this. It's like a full centimeter bigger, sweeter and less stringency and so forth. So we're even seeing now the yellow Merciaria group is starting to grow with some named cultivars. I've also even heard that there's a named cultivar of Cambuca now. I don't know how different, it didn't look that different to me. And then there's the red-blue Merciarias, which is really only 2. But we have found that Camu, which is very difficult to grow, very tropical, very fussy, lives underwater 6 months out of the year. People grow them, in a foot-tall pot in 6 inches of water, and they love it. So you can literally grow them underwater, significantly underwater, and they just thrive. And that camu is intercompatible with Vexator, right? Blue grape. They're very different looking trees, but they are graft intercompatible. There's multiple examples of that. Okay, so the yellow Plinias, let's talk about those. These are the big Jaboticaba I'm sorry, these are not Jaboticaba. That was a mistake. These are the big Plinias. These are coming mostly from the tropical parts of northern South America, and they get huge. I want to just show you. So yeah, here's the 6 that we have: Plinia inflata, and then which is known as mulchi, and then Plinia inflata giant mulchi. We suspect this may be another species, and let me tell you why. The regular inflata, which is also known as mulchi, and then in the different native languages, I think Quechua and Quechua and another language, it has 3 different names: mulchi, shawi, aniwayo. Those are the same thing. We are 100% sure of that now. They are not different. Those are all the same thing, Plinia inflata. Now, that's fairly widespread, right? Ecuador, Peru, the tropical parts of Northwest South America, and even into the eastern parts of the Amazon. This bad boy here is from just outside of Tena, Ecuador. And what we had thought was maybe just a freak tree that made different fruit for several years until we found that there is a hammock of them. There is an area of these trees. Why is that important? Because it means the genes are passing on through the seed. You don't have to graft it. We're pretty highly certain that these are going to pass on their giant fruit capability through the seed. So that's awesome. Is it actually going to be a different species or not? I don't know. I'm not sure. But the important part is that these bad boys are hopefully going to give us some freaking huge fruit, which I'm going to show you in a minute. How big? Oh, that big. That is the giant mulchi. They are like kind of medium grapefruit sized. How do they taste? I would love to know. I would love to know. I've been trying to get a good description from people who don't describe it well as dulce. You know, it's like, if someone describes a sweet as fruit again, I want to slap them. It's like not helpful at all, you know? And the production of these is insane. They have that coniferous production, and they put out like you've never seen. I want to show you that one photo. No? I didn't put it in there. Darn it. Okay, well I have a photo that's my favorite fruit photo of all time. It's just an inflata, just decked out with fruit. So these are the yellows. This is the dwarf mulchi, much fussier plant. Kind of a pain in the ass, frankly. Frankly, it's a little kind of small tree shrub-like thing that spits out these fruit, and they're kind of spicy. Yeah, it's weird. This is Plinia clausa, which is one of the yellows. And then we get to Cambuca. This is probably the only yellow you're gonna find in Florida, at least of any size. You're gonna see more of these in the future, but this is my tree from my farm. That's my hand and our fruits. These things are awesome. They are so good. They're like a nice, soft, peachy flavor with a little hint of Jaboticaba to them. They are so good. The problem is you have to really wait until they are ripe. You almost want to pick them off the ground. I wouldn't recommend picking other Jaboticabas or other Plinias off the ground, but these ones, they eventually do fall, and they are freaking great when they're ripe. If you don't get them ripe, they're not great. The last 8 to 10 millimeters of the outside is thick and kind of like you can like kind of scrape it with your teeth, but it's not great. If you let it fully ripen, it is a fantastic world-class fruit. Like I give it
you have a bricks number for that?
Bricks number? I do in my database, but I don't have it in front of me. Yeah. No, I do have bricks numbers though. Yeah, so like we post some awesome data on our website, awesome description of plants, anything that we're growing ourselves. We do a ton of research. We measure bricks levels. We do it three times too. We do it early, on point, and late. So we'll pick some intentionally
What's
early.
that bricks number?
I don't know. Well, I can tell you for some of the other ones. So like for example, Scarlet is in the 20 to 22 range.
Wow.
And red Jaboticaba is in the like 14 to 16 range. And I have a lot of this stuff written down. So we try to get a sour number, like a ripe number, and then like starting to get sweet, kind of fermenty. And so we measure all those. We measure seed weights. We measure the seed sizes. I've been doing all this stuff. And most importantly, we are measuring percentage of weight as pulp, right? So what I do is I make sure I get at least 10 fruit. hundreds, the largest number I can get possible, weigh them, take them, eat every last, suck the chicken bone dry, get every last piece of pulp off those suckers, and put the skin back and the seeds back on the scale, and weigh that. And now I can just say with the easy algebra, it's 74% pulp, it's 85% pulp, it's 40% pulp. We published all that, no one's doing that. That's what we're doing. Okay, the true Jaboticabas, they come in all kinds of different colors and sizes. They're all graft intercompatible. Every one of them's amazing. I've tried at least 70 different Jaboticaba cultivars. I go down there every November, see Joyce's family and do a little bit of business, which is really more like pleasure. But we check out, different growers. The worst Jaboticaba I've had, I would still give it 8 or 9 out of 10. They're all excellent. Yellow Merciarias. And then I threw Glomerata in there. Let's address that real quick, because that's another annoying one. You see the Cabe Luda, right? In so many, even the Naples, whatever garden, it's still labeled, Merciaria Glomerata. It's not Glomerata, okay? This is Cabe Luda. This is Glazioviana. It is a yellow fruit, okay? And it is not hard to get. You can get these on Etsy, eBay. $10 to get you one of these guys here, no problem. Glomerata, those seeds are trading for north of $150, okay? Those are very, very hard to get. I've not been able to get my paws on them. I'm connected with, seed sellers here. Very, very hard to get Glomerata. It's supposed to be an exceptional fruit. It is red. It is not yellow. It is smaller than the Glazioviana. It is a different species completely, and a lot of the internet is being corrected slowly as the years have gone by that there are a difference between the two. But even in PSIT, so we're a licensed nursery. We do phytos and we ship seeds. PSIT is I don't even know what it stands for, but it's a thing it's a website you go on to get a phyto. It's all still labeled Glomerata. It drives me crazy. So I'm intentionally, I'm shipping stuff and I have to label it and correct it. It drives me crazy. So yeah, we've been doing these kind of pretty photo collages where we try to measure things and we put them in there. There's the blue grape. As you can see, very astringent. That's what I was talking about when I said this is, the Merciarias are the Plinia's less developed, cousin. Oh, my favorite one. This is the Plinia Spirito-Songtensis. It is the most beautiful Jaboticaba. There's just nothing in comparison to it. It comes out different shades of pink to salmon to purple to Minnesota Vikings purple. And when you see it at night with your headlamp on, it just pops. It is spectacular. It never gets old. It's just beautiful. Every time it flushes, it does that about every 2 months, and it just never gets old. Heirloom varieties, breeding goals. Yeah, so I've started some of this. I've got 3 ideas of what I'm trying to do for breeding Jaboticabas, but I'll give you one of them. I don't want to give away everything. But basically, I'm trying to make a large Jaboticaba with a thick skin and no seed, right? So we've got 2 or 3 Jaboticaba varieties that the percentage of aborted seeds is very, very high, and the ones that do produce, they're so small you can just swallow them. We're talking 3 or 4 millimeter seeds. They're nothing. The ones in the Sabara, those are pretty darn small. Sabara is one of the best Jaboticabas. So we're taking some of the seedless varieties. Sabara, frankly, is up there. Pingo de Mel, and of course the Sapucaia is the classic one that's mentioned. It's not the best though. Holsta de Piscoso is also very good. And then I'm starting to cross them with some of the bigger ones. The problem is I can't get my paws on fruiting germplasm of the really big ones. I have about 7,000 Jaboticaba trees at our nursery of hundreds of varieties, and so I'm working on it, but I just don't have the stuff that's fruiting yet. But anyway, I've got a bunch of cool plans. And then there's other goals, precocity and so forth. But yeah, there are some people who are actively starting to breed these things outside of Brazil, and we have some really cool ideas. This is something I just threw in here recently. There's a couple of famous Jaboticaba collections in Brazil. This is one of them. Joyce and I are friends with the Vilela family. They are big collection of Jaboticaba trees. This is kind of getting into more detail than I want to get into in this presentation, but yeah, they have a spectacular collection. I just did, this is a mapping of their grove and some of the different species. Although it's a couple hundred trees, it's really only, I think, 14 different varieties. Jose Vilela. This is their farm in Brazil. Absolutely beautiful place. We stay in their guest house. Okay, growing. Main concerns: light, water, foil, fertilizer, nutrients. You guys, this is like, everybody here knows this stuff. I'm not gonna go over boring stuff. Your most important thing is keep your pH down. As like 90% of the time people kill a Jaboticaba tree or it won't grow, the pH is too high. Especially if you plant it in the ground, right? So I recommend people keep them in containers as long as you want. Number one, it's gonna fruit faster, right? Resources are constrained. Number two, you got more control over the soil, right? And number three, you can move it or sell it. So you should keep those in pots if you can. Cold and heat tolerance. Oh yeah, that was fun. This bad boy right here took a 31.5 for 90 minutes and a 30.5 night for 2 hours about a month ago. So even the yellow ones that are, and I had the sensor right next to it. I know Crafton was talking about it can be 2 feet off and it's 7 degrees warmer, and there's some truth to that. But I mean, I'm like pretty darn certain that this bad boy took a freeze, because I had Bakureas and Theobromas next to it, toast, completely toast. And these guys were fine. So even the yellow Jaboticabas are taking freezes. We've got people growing Jaboticaba up to the Florida-Georgia border, deep into 9A, deep. I mean, these things are taking freezes that are just blowing my mind. We originally thought it was high 20s, then we thought it was mid 20s. I'm hearing mature trees going down to the low 20s. I mean, and if you're in the low 20s for a freeze on the Florida-Georgia border, how many times are you freezing a year? 50, right? I mean, these things are much more freeze tolerant than we thought, even at the seedling level, right? That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm gonna skip the boring stuff. This is for like people who don't know much about growing, but yeah, keep your salinity low. I mean, this is just stuff that you know about all the trees. So yeah, that's your main thing is keeping your pH down, right? You have basically three things you want to control: water, soil, amendments, right? You can get away with doing one bad, maybe two, but not all three, right? So if you're gonna put it in the soil out here, the pH is in the low 8s, something like that, 8.2, 8.3, whatever, 8.1. That's a death sentence to most Jaboticabas if you leave it there for a long time, right? So now let's talk about water. What kind of water are you using? Well water, most of the time, is gonna come out in the kind of mid 7s, something like that, 7.5-ish. The county water is coming out at about 8.3. That is also a death sentence, right? So if you can, use well water, not the county water. And if you're like, well, that's all I got the soil in my backyard and county water, you gotta mend the hell out of it, right? What's the cheapest way to do that? Sulfur. You can get these 50-pound bags of sulfur from Diamond R. I pay about 20 bucks. And basically I go, and you can't overdo the sulfur. Impossible. I tried to kill them. I'm like the Hitler of Jaboticabas. I've killed them every way you can imagine. I've over-salted them, underwatered them, and heated them, and put the sulfur on. I've killed Jaboticabas every way you could possibly kill them. You can't overdo it with sulfur. That's something that's fun to know. You can literally take the sulfur, put a 1/4 inch of it in here, and the plant will love it. So put as much sulfur as you can. The way you can cheat here is you can do it from your air conditioning. This is actually our school. So you can see here there's the air conditioning condensate line drip. And we just have it go into a tube, see it collects right there, and that goes in there, and that's an awesome way to do it. And it's a plant you can put next to your house, right? Oh no, don't plant it there, you're too close to your house. That's true in most cases with trees, right? Not Jaboticaba. You can put that thing as close to your house as you want. It's not gonna get into there. I mean, their trees rarely even reach to their root line, right, to their drip line. And their drip line's not very big. So you can safely put a Jaboticaba 10 feet or even less from your house. It's not gonna be a problem. There's our growth. So growth rates. So that's about 3 years of growth. Kind of gives you an idea of how fast they grow. That is the exact same view. Now we got some performance enhancing drugs going on in there, right? I'm cranking those things with fertilizer. They're not drinking Navion. They're getting really good fertilizers and water and keeping the pH down and so forth. But This is about what kind of the upper end you might see of what's possible, but I wouldn't expect your trees to do that well initially. Oh yeah, coffee. Yeah, Starbucks will hook it up for free. They know me there. I go there with my bin and I'm like, hey guys, and they give me their grounds, right? You can go there, any Starbucks store will give it to you. You just bring in a bin, and I usually go out like after the morning rush, like around 10 a.m. and they just dump it in there. And then I go and I throw it on my tree and I spend a minute getting my hands completely stained and then they smell for a day. Like coffee grounds, and just dump the coffee grounds on there. Awesome free way to get fertilizer, and then the other way is of course with the sulfur down there. So, what problems do they have? Almost nothing except for the water and the fertilizer, right? No pollination problems, no significant pest problems. There's really no issues at all with Plinia. Now Merciaria is a whole different story. Plenty of problems with that. Is it actual pollination and cross-pollination problems? I don't know, but they rarely put out fruit when they're by themselves for the first couple of years, right? So 3, 4, 5 years after being by yourself and putting out flowers, they will start to set by themselves, but they definitely benefit from cross-pollination. If you have 2 or 3 of them, fruiting next to each other, you can get fruit much quicker. Yeah, leaf tip burn. I mean, I can go over all these, but it's usually the same thing. Your pH is too high. Either hit it with sulfur, chelated iron, anything that's going to drop the pH, or you're not giving it enough water. And then there's the obvious stuff that just hits any tree, like any kind of bug will hit it like any tree, right? Aphids and thrips and scale. And yeah, you just treat that how you would normally treat those problems. But if you're having a problem with your Jaboticaba, it's your pH or you're not keeping it wet enough. That's pretty much it. Yeah, and so I'm not gonna go over this because this is just like standard for grower stuff. Boring beetles. Oh yeah, okay, let's talk about the enemy. We have 2 main enemies that we face as Plinia growers. Small mammals and birds. So let's talk about air defense. Birds absolutely love Jaboticaba. Am I right?
Yes.
Who's your biggest enemy, birds or mammals?
No, birds, by far.
Birds, yeah. Birds are the biggest enemy. They absolutely love it, and it's just very hit or miss on what happens. Like 2 springs ago, we got cleaned out, man. The mockingjays came, and in less than 24 hours, they wiped out thousands of fruit. Thousands of fruit. There was like 10 birds. Like, where'd you even put that? I don't even know where they put the frickin' pulp. Their belly's like that big, and they each of them make that much fruit. And then I have other times where we're crowded with birds, and I'm like, oh no, this is terrible. And they didn't eat nothing, hardly anything. I don't know why they eat sometimes and why they don't eat sometimes. I know Florida is a migratory fowl area, right? Some birds are passing through to Mexico, and some of them live here year round. And I don't know who's doing it, but I don't like any of it. There's some nets I made. Little bastards got inside my net last spring. It was a hole this big. It's not even, couldn't fit a tangerine in it, and a mockingjay got it. I mean, you could barely pass a golf ball through that hole, and they got into it. I'm telling you, they're good.
Did it get out?
I wanted to kill it, I did let it out. I did let the bird out. But I swore at Plenty and cursed it.
It's good to know.
Yeah. Oh, there he is, I put it in there. I forgot about that. That's the enemy. Okay, I forgot I put that slide in there. Okay, let's talk about ground forces. Small mammals. Pretty much anything with a mouth that is walking on the ground that is a mammal will try to eat the fruit. Rats, mice, squirrels, raccoons, possums I don't know about because they're out at night and I don't know, I've never caught one eating them, but any kind of mammal, particularly like rats is going to be your biggest problem, right? And that's the same with all the other fruit. I mean, it's like, who here has had rats eat their fruit? Like, pretty much everybody probably. Okay, skin stretching and stretch. I love this. I call it it's like marbling on a steak. You want a nicely marbled Jaboticaba, right? You want one that just looks beautiful. They do this sometimes randomly and sometimes not. Yeah, this is very uncommon for the red Jaboticaba. It did that, and I just think of it as like a gift from the Greek gods, this Greek marbled fruit. It just makes it extra tasty, okay? And then some of them, they do it all the time. So many Jaboticaba cultivars that are something hajada. Hajada branca, hajada this, hajada that, just means stripe. But those will do it like that all the time. Some of them have this like gnarly, psychedelic, almost looks like fire going on the fruit. And they're highly desired, right? The cooler the marks, the cooler the fruit. And it makes it taste better in your mind. Bark peeling, I love that when you get these newbies that are like, guys, how my tree's dying, look at the bark. And it's their first, I mean, this is all Myrtaceae, right? I mean, not all Myrtaceae, but most Myrtaceae do this. And like, meanwhile, it's like, congratulations, you're doing great. Your tree's happy. The more they peel, the better. That's a happy tree. They're like, feels great. They want some sun. Plinia CPR. Yeah, so if you've gotten enough water, you've gotten that pH down, and that sucker is still dying, and I've killed thousands of Jaboticabas. Trees, grafted, scions, seeds, I've killed them every way you can imagine. CPR, right? It's time for CPR. Take your plant, go get a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket, yank her out by the tail. Well, okay, kind of gently do it, but take it and put it in the bucket and kind of break it up and kind of shake it like this and get it so it's bare rooted. Get that bucket of water, pull it out, put it in all new soil, and very gentle. You can't like put the soil in there and jam it in. You have to like hold it there and add the soil around it, tap it in there real gentle. It's probably going to defoliate. Put it in the shade, and probably like 90% of the time they recover. Because a lot of times when you can't figure out why they're dying and you've got everything else right, it's some type of like root issue or nematodes getting the roots or something like that. Propagation, you guys know all this. Seeds, yeah, germination rates are incredible. 80% is what we tell people. It's usually north of 90. 100% is not even uncommon with 100 seeds if they're fresh. Jaboticaba seeds, we store them in 2 conditions. We store them in cold storage, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So when we get our seeds, we do an 8-step process. It's really dialed in now because we killed seeds on every step of the way. But basically, we take the seeds, we depulp them. We take those, we put them in a delicates bag, like for lingerie. We do 1 part perlite, 1 part pulpy seeds, mix it up, break up the chunks, put it in a seed washing machine for about 15 minutes, sometimes 1, sometimes 2, rarely 3 cycles. It beats it up, we take that out, they come out spick and span, perfectly clean. We then take the seeds, we dunk them in hydrogen peroxide for about 5 minutes. We're experimenting with bleach and some other things per the Fort Collins Research Facility in Colorado, which is a national germplasm depository. We've been using some of their procedures. Some I like, some I don't. So we disinfect, we then take them out, we put them in a fungicide dip, so sometimes mancozeb, sometimes copper sulfate, and sometimes we mix them all together. There's no contraindications or danger in doing that. We then take them, we put them in an auto desiccator. We have that set so we get it down to a relative humidity of 25% at room temperature. So we have that go in there, we watch the hygrometer. When it hits 25%, we pull it, leave it overnight, let it continue to equilibrate. More off-gassing will occur, turn it on again the next morning. Get it so it's at like a stable 25% relative humidity. Take it, put it in a bag, put it in the fridge. We're now experimenting with partially hydrogenized salts to drop the humidity when you put it in the fridge, right? Because if it's 25% relative humidity at room temp, when you drop it to 40 in the fridge, what happens to the relative humidity? Right? It's gonna go up. It's too humid in the fridge. Okay, now same thing, when you take that 25% relative humidity at room temp, and now it's in the back of a mail truck in India, what happened to the relative humidity? Right? So we've already done this. We're just trying to figure out exactly how we want to roll this out. But we have partially hydrogenized salts that can go both ways, and that's awesome, and no one's doing that. We're gonna be the first. So, we prefer cold storage for that reason. For a number of reasons, you can control so many more variables. They last so much longer, less issues with mold. But once they start to germinate, you do have to keep them moist. You do have to keep them in vermiculite or sphagnum or whatever. But I don't like them germinated for a lot of reasons. They're way better stored ungerminated. There's my aunt, Brazil. That's Joyce's aunt. Wife's aunt, I guess. Chia. Grafting, nothing special. Match the cambium, wrap it tight, throw it in the shade. No big deal. Yeah, same thing as any other fruit tree. Don't, if it starts flowering on the scion, lick that thing off, because that thing's sucking your energy. You want the cambium to heal. Ha! Air layering. I have like 2 guys that done this in the world. Yeah, you can air layer Jaboticaba. This is true. You could also build a bridge out of spaghetti noodles if you wanted to. Have fun? No thanks. I've tried it many times, waited for years on it, and going back and re-scrape them and hit them with the powder, and it doesn't, nothing seems to work. Approach grafting is awesome. Yeah, if you've got the time and skills to do that, that's probably your best bet of all. Cuttings, yeah. This is like the new topic these days. People have always said they'll root, but they won't shoot, right? Plenty of people, there's all these little methods on how to do root cuttings. Very few people, many people can get them to root, few can get them to shoot, right? And there's guys that, I mean, unless they're photoshopping it, are now getting them to shoot. I don't know how they're doing it. I'm very interested in it myself. Production, Jaboticaba-holic. One who cannot control their obsession with Jaboticaba trees and comes to support groups. So you're all loved.
I'm going to the.
That's what this meeting is, right? Something about a fruit club. The market for rare trees. Yeah, there are all kinds of people selling Jaboticaba trees nowadays. Bonsai, yeah, Caipirinha, it's like this little dwarf Jaboticaba, little cute little fruit. It's a really cute little tree. Doesn't get very big. This is like the one time I found Jaboticaba for sale like twice in the United States. This is Daryl from Sweet Song Grove. Some of you may know him up towards Sarasota. And he was actually selling them there. I think they were only like $10 or something. I was like, this is such a deal. The seeds in there alone are worth more than that. And so you can find them once in a while, but they're very rare, even in Brazil. They're hard to find even in Brazil. You do find them for sale in Brazil, but they just don't hold, right? Non-air conditioned Jaboticaba Sabara, if you're lucky, and if you pick it right, you've got 48 hours, tops, unrefrigerated. And sometimes it's less than 24. It's really frustrating. I used to sell fruit, I'm done with it. I tried overnighting, I tried cold packs. You know, I'm just tired of people accusing me of selling them rotted. I'm like, oh yeah, I was like, oh, let me get this guy with some rotten Jaboticaba, you know, and then have him pit. So I don't do that anymore. I don't sell fruit. It just doesn't work. Now, that's not totally true. There are some of the ones with the thicker skulls, thicker husks, skins, whatever you want to call it, that are much longer hold. Grimmel is awesome. Grimmel will hold 3-4 days, no problem. Right, that's this guy right here. Grimmel, there are some with the thicker skins. And there's a real potential there for like a serious commercial operation with some work. But it's usually a backyard fruit, right? It's a dooryard fruit. There's a lot of Jaboticaba products. I'm going to show you here in a minute. Everything Jaboticaba you can imagine. We've got popsicles, picolé, juice, ice cream, all kinds of alcohol, wine, liquor, this and that. And then beer. This is actually our own beer. So we have a farm in our neighborhood that has a brewery, the Crazy Dingo Brewery, and they actually made that with our Jaboticaba. So that's actually our beer right there on the right. And then there's a couple little microbreweries that are throwing around some beers here and there. It's not a big thing. It kind of sucks. Okay. My neighbor was really nice to me, telling me, but I hope someone liked it. It tastes like a grape, right? It's like, come on, it's all right for wine, but for beer, it's like, go home, I'll tell you what, go home and put some Welch's grape juice in your beer and see if you like it. Oh yeah, okay, so the Bible, the New Testament and the Old Testament. This is the Old Testament. It is awesome. It is in English, which is nice. And it has about 20% as much content as this one. The New Testament here is in Portuguese, but it has a ton of Jaboticaba varieties. I'm pretty close with the two authors, Harry Lorenzi. We go to visit him every year. He's the owner and I guess executive director of Plantarum, which is in Nova Odessa, 2 hours northwest of Campinas. Amazing collection of Jaboticaba. Jaboticabas. They are so nice. Huge ones all around his house. He's got this big old thing with like 40, 50 acre garden. And then he has his little house in the back with like barbed wire fence around it. He lets us inside. And so he's got this species and that species. Guess what he's got inside that fence? All Jaboticabas. Yeah, he knows the good stuff. So he's got a really good collection. He contributed that, and then of course Marco Lacerda. I don't know if you guys know him, but he's the owner of eJardim, EduardoJardim.com. Kind of sounds like a guy's name, I think it is, and they kind of made E like electronic now for the web. But anyway, those are two guys I've done a lot of work with, and bought seeds and this and that. So
James,
yeah,
that book is also available in English.
yeah, that's right. They just did that about 2 years ago. Marco, thank you for saying that. Published out. It's really hard to find. It's the Apple bookstore.
Yes, right. It is an ebook.
Yeah, it's an ebook on Apple Books. It's not easy to find.
No, it's
like,
not.
yeah, it kind of stinks. Even if you go to their thing, you have to search like 5 different times to find it. Anyway, but yeah, it is an ebook. It is in English, and it is awesome.
Yes.
Okay, marketplaces, TFF. I'm sure a lot of you guys are on there. Facebook, there's a whole bunch of Plinia Merciaria pages. There used to be just one run by Adam Schafferin, and then a bunch of kind of drama happened a few years ago, and now there's a whole bunch of them. And they're all awesome. They're all good. eJardim.com, that's Marco Lacerda's. eBay is for every guy selling them in his backyard, and then our website. Okay, y'all ready for the quiz? Here's how we're gonna do it. If you get one of the questions right, I'll give you first pick, okay? Here we have the giant inflata, right? Here we have a grimmel, super thick skin, awesome, awesome, awesome fruit. Here we have a malacacheta. This is one of the, like I have 4 so far, but there's gonna be more. This is what I call like the 4 wild Jaboticabas, like malacacheta, peludo de mucuri, sapuca. There's a whole bunch of these, and they're like, I call them wild because they're smaller, they're kind of striped and hairy. They just look like, oh, that's what Jaboticaba looked like before humans had a bunch of time to breed it, huh? That's pretty much what they remind me of. But they're still really good. The taste is good, and they're very cute. They're a really cute little fruit. And then we have the cabeuda, not the yellow Jaboticaba. And I guess runner-up will get to take these home. Okay.
Blue grape.
Raise your hand if you're ready. Raise your hand. First person to raise their hand gets to take a whack at it. 4, I can name 12. Come on.
Cauliflora, Orinia, Coronada.
Hold on, cauliflower.
Yeah. Orania,
Ariana.
Ariana, yeah. And Coronada.
Coronada.
And Filtran.
Petranta. Hey, all right.
Which one's the sweetest one? Is it a girl?
I'd probably take the grimmel.
Huh?
I'd probably take the grimmel.
The second one? Cool.
Yeah.
Fill out your application.
Okay, you guys ready? So, first person, so you raise your hand and I'll call you out, right?
You're not supposed to win, so end again.
You can't win again.
No.
You can't win twice. No phones, no YouTube, no Google. Teachers watching. Hey, this guy's cheating though, sharing notes.
Well, she can win, right?
Well, if nobody's gonna win, I guess I can do that. No one can do it? It's bringing a tear to my heart.
They don't even have a place to put it. They live in an apartment.
Okay, we'll give it to Guaquia, also known as Guaquica.
Okay. Sambuca?
That's a common name. What's the genus?
I don't know. Common?
No, that's another common. All right, maybe you can do that. What else you got?
Yeah. I think I failed.
Oh, we gotta move on.
All right, next.
I'll give her one.
You guys ready? Let's do another one.
I'll give her one.
No, we're gonna keep
No. Keep it honest.
we don't do consolation prizes in my house. This isn't like Disneyland America. You gotta win. Alright, you ready?